Well, it's time for another episode of the Pops and Drops podcast.
What up, people?
It's we're up to 24 episodes now, so we've been doing this for a little while.
Yep.
And I noticed in editing last week's podcast that I have a squeaky chair, so remind me to get some WD-40 out of the shop.
Okay.
Because every time I move, the chair squeaks.
I can hear it now.
But this week I thought we would talk about what's next with humanity.
Okay.
So I saw a movie, David Wilcock movie called The Cosmic Secret.
Okay.
Kind of rolls up a lot of the internet, the online hypotheses about multi-dimensional travel and the origins of man and ancient civilizations and the builder race and all kinds of cool stuff that people never talked about before the internet was around. I guess.
The builder race?
Yeah. So
the tall whites and the grays, them? Or
I don't know. They
before
didn't
them,
really
or?
talk too much about their physical appearance, but the story was that there was a race that was called the Builder Race that created a safe space in the galaxy. There's like 52 stars that are close to our sun, and they created some kind of celestial
barrier?
Yeah, some kind of like weapon system that kept this part of the galaxy isolated from the whatever else was going on in the universe.
The Space Wars?
The Space Wars or whatever. So this ancient builder race was billions of years ago. And then like hundreds of millions of years ago, there was their successor was called the progenitors, and they tried to use this defensive technology that was out there in a war that they were involved with, but they were in our solar system. They were on.
Was it a war within our solar system?
Yeah. So there was supposedly, here's the story. There was a giant planet where the asteroid belt is now. And it was like...
Naribu? Naribu?
No, this was, I can't remember what they called it. Started with a T, Tatiana, or I don't know, some big giant planet.
Okay.
And a moon. And the moon around this big planet also had a civilization on it. And so there was one group on the big planet, which they said was like a massive Earth. And then there was another group that was on the large moon that went around it. Both had water and had, old ancient civilizations on them. And so apparently one of the two, either the one on the moon or the one on the major planet, tried to redirect the energy from this defensive system to destroy their opponent, and ended up blowing up
both of them,
essentially blowing them both up. And so the survivors of that catastrophe got on a moon, a planetoid that they somehow transported to Earth, which didn't have a big moon at the time, and what's now the moon was essentially the ship that they used to transport the remnants of their civilization from where the giant planet had been blown apart to Earth. And Earth kind of became a refugee camp for this ancient civilization.
Huh.
But the progenitors, the not the builders, not the what did I say, the ancient builders or whatever,
Yeah.
the builder race, the progenitors copied their architecture and their technology, but they weren't the actual people who built it.
Okay.
Anyway, it was interesting. But essentially, and this all happened millions of years ago, which is why they find these artifacts encased in, in layers of stone and earth and mineral deposits that are millions of years old. So they're finding, axes and all kinds of stuff that suggests that the mainstream narrative about humans' evolution is a lie, that human-like people have been on this planet for millions of years, not just tens of thousands. And that our current archaeology, which basically says we're 10,500 years old, is only post the last catastrophic event. And that there was millions of years of history. They found these little orbs in Africa. I don't know if you've heard about these, but they're the little hematite spheres that have the three lines carved around them.
Yeah.
You've seen those?
Yeah, I think those are on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah. Those are 1 billion years old.
What?
Yes. Those were in rock that was aged at 1 billion years.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot going on that
We don't know. I've been saying this since day one. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
I think that suggests an elevation of collective consciousness. The fact that we've gone from the hubris of thinking as a civilization, thinking we knew how we got where we are, who built the pyramids, how old they are, that Amazon rainforest has been rainforest forever, and now we have LIDAR that's finding all these ancient civilizations under the trees.
Yeah.
That the idea that the story that we've been fed is, being disproven on a daily basis allows us to achieve an open-mindedness that will hopefully lead to an elevation of consciousness.
Which will allow us to enter the federation that already exists.
Right.
That does not let us in yet because we still have nukes and guns and all that crap.
Yeah.
The stuff that I've been saying for a long time, we need to come together as a globe.
But not as a global government. And that's the problem, is that the forces that are trying to feed you a story and keep you from elevating your consciousness, like the Roman Catholic Church, are preventing that. So it's not, yes, we need to come together in collective consciousness, but not through a global government or a religion.
Well, how do we come together then?
Through communication, Snapchat and WhatsApp.
Instagram is going to save the humanity.
As long as they don't impose their algorithms that block the communication of the consciousness elevating discussions.
Yeah. I think that the algorithms are pretty woke.
Okay. But even the wokeness is so one of the things in this movie was a researcher who was talking about the suppression of the message of Christ that was corrupted in 300 AD, where they made, they essentially took some of Christ's teachings out of his message, which were the feminine parts of spirituality. And what they kept was gendered: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
And by removing the feminine, they tried to essentially make the patriarchy, or this idea of masculine energy, being the right way to organize societies and people's beliefs. They essentially stifled the actual consciousness, growth in consciousness that the ancient people who had, been trying to help us along had in mind. And
They eliminated the book of Enoch too.
yep, and the Gnostic texts, which talk about Sophia, and they flipped the whole Garden of Eden story where where Eve became the villain for eating from the tree of knowledge, where Sophia, the ancient feminine side of consciousness, represents wisdom, learning and growing and expanding your, beliefs, was essentially the good part of growth.
Yeah.
And the whole Garden of Eden parable was set up to say, no, the Heavenly Father, which says, I will take care of you. You don't need to take care of yourself. You don't need personal sovereignty. You don't need to take personal responsibility. The Heavenly Father will take care of that for you. So you just be a good little girl and good little boy, and you do what I say, and everything will be fine.
Yeah. But they still said that it was the tree of knowledge. Like, why didn't they change that?
No, they didn't want people to try and learn and grow.
I know, but they kept it still out front. They called it the tree of knowledge.
Yeah, because they said don't. They wanted people to think.
That's the irony of the whole thing.
Well, see, but what you're thinking that they should have called it something else. And what I'm saying is the message they were trying to deliver is stay ignorant and behave yourself. And you rely on us to tell you what to think and how to behave.
But the people back then were so stupid that they didn't get that. But it's right in front of our face. It's right in front. It's right up front. It's hiding in plain sight.
It's not hiding. The message of the story of the Garden of Eden is learning is bad.
Yes, I know.
So, of course, they called it the tree of knowledge.
But that's stupid.
What do you mean?
They should have called it like the tree of sin. They weren't sly about it. That's what I'm saying.
They weren't trying to be sly. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They said, don't want to learn. They called it the tree of knowledge and said, when you eat the apple from the tree of knowledge, you will be cast out.
Yeah.
You will no longer have access to the tree of life, which means your physical, your physical being is not going to be able to regenerate and live for thousands of years. You're now going to have a restricted lifespan. So you're going to only live 70 years or whatever. But you will have learned that you should be wearing clothes, and you'll know that you have to grow your own food. I mean, the whole thing is set up as a metaphor to get people to give up their own personal sovereignty to a higher power.
Yeah.
And so that's why the God of Abraham, this patriarchal God that all of the world's religions, monotheistic religions, say, this is what's good. What's good is following the religious teachings of the priests, of the rulers, and don't go out and expand your consciousness. And now what's coming up is people start, because of the access to greater information through the internet and, and the world shrinking as people can interact with one another more closely, we're learning about the Gnostic texts. We're learning about Sophia and the metaphors that theoretically came from some of these ancient civilizations that predate these catastrophes. And that's, I think, elevating the consciousness of the planet. And so people like David Wilcock, hats off to him. And he doesn't know it, but I think Eric Weinstein is even helping to elevate consciousness through his study of physics and trying to get out of the restricted framework that has kind of had physics locked down for a while. He's experimenting and playing around with different mathematics and things.
That's what I've been saying. The limit does not exist.
What do you mean?
The limit does not exist.
Right. Well, there's certainly, if we live in that, and that goes to Greg Braden's work. Did you get a chance to watch Greg Braden's work?
Yeah, I listened to one of them.
So his basic approach is to look at the scientific literature and look at evidence that we don't know, that things like what we believe is true is not necessarily true, that there's a lot of unexplained phenomena, specifically the evidence of a fractal universe, and the things like spooky action at a distance, the double slit experiment. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't follow what we would call the laws of physics, but are obviously, it's physics. I mean, it's observable, but it's not. It's counterintuitive, and the Heisenberg principle, basically that when you conduct an experiment without an observer, you get one result, and if somebody's watching while the experiment is going on, you get a different result. So that the consciousness of the observer influences the outcome of the experiment.
The one that I listened to, he also talked about how they discovered that there are neurons in our heart as well as our brain.
Interesting. Well, the fact that they did an experiment where
But that could have also been someone looking for that, and then they've discovered it.
Yes.
But now that I think about it.
Well, but the one that I thought was really interesting was where they took DNA, they isolated human DNA, they put it in a container, and they put it within a few meters of different people, and they had one person concentrate on feelings of love and gratitude, and they had somebody else, thinking thoughts about sorrow, despair, anger, greed, and that the DNA was actually altered by the emotions of the humans
just near it. That's crazy, but it makes sense. That's what I've been saying, man. This whole time.
Yeah. Well, you've been right. So we should have a community. If we can get a community of people that will concentrate on love, gratitude, and beauty, then we could change the DNA of the planet.
Yep.
So we would call it what? Love, gratitude, beauty creates transformation.
Yeah, but there needs to be a better acronym.
Why? LGBT.
Oh.
We could have an LGBT community. Love, gratitude, beauty equals transformation.
That's cool. That's cool.
The meaning of LGBT is now love, gratitude, beauty equals transformation.
That's good, man.
Join the community.
You need to add a Q in there, though.
Why?
Because it's LGBTQ.
Well, that's different. That has to do with expressions of human sexuality. We're talking about healing the planet. The LGBTQ community can be the human sexual expression community. Okay. The LGBT community is now going to be how we heal the planet.
That's good. That's good.
We need t-shirts. Love, gratitude, beauty equals transformation.
Yeah. Available on Pops and Drops in a few weeks.
Oh, good.
There we go.
Okay.
I can do that.
Do some artwork, make some t-shirts.
Yep.
So the other thing that one of the people that's in this movie, by the way, is the guy that runs ECETI Ranch at Mount Adams, which is we can actually see from our property.
Yeah.
It's a long way away, but we're up on top of a mountain, so we can see Mount Adams, which is where this Isetti Ranch is, which is where the aliens visit.
We should go. We got to go there, man.
Yeah. So it's about 65 miles away, I think.
That's not that far. It's not too bad.
Yeah. Should drive up there. Although I've seen some of the videotape from, from his.
Well, we saw a UFO like a couple days ago.
You thought you did.
Did you realize what it was? It wasn't a UFO?
I've gone out subsequent evenings and it's still in the same spot. So,
but it's moving.
It looks like it moved, but as when you concentrated on it, but I think that was just an optical illusion.
Or it was me thinking that it was a UFO and it was creating a UFO right there while I was watching it. Because I was observing.
Okay. Well, I've been observing the last 2 nights. I think it's a planet. I don't know which planet it is. I guess we could use one of those stargazer apps or whatever to figure out what's there. But
yeah,
it does definitely twinkle differently than a star. But there is another star, remember, just over to the right of it when you're looking at it. And that same bright object has been in that spot the last 2 nights. So I don't think it's a flying craft because it hasn't moved.
Okay. I've seen UFOs probably 3 or 4 times in my life.
Okay.
I saw one at the Grand Canyon. We went to the Grand Canyon when we got to the Grand Canyon and it was pitch black. And we didn't actually get to see the Grand Canyon, but we looked up and there was like a legit UFO like making weird patterns in the sky.
Yeah.
And then when I was on the rooftop in Chicago one day, when I think it was on my rooftop when I lived off on Lakeshore Drive, I saw a UFO there with a bunch of my friends, and they were like, "Holy crap, dude!" And I saw one in LA once.
So there are obviously some craft that humans have built, based on borrowed technology, and then there are the craft that originate elsewhere. And I think,
well, the footage has been released from the government of the UFOs.
Yeah,
they dropped that. They were like, "Yeah, it's real. Here's the proof."
Yep.
It's crazy that everyone isn't like still talking about it. I think it'll pick back up though. And I think people are starting to wake up.
Yeah. I mean, there's 7 billion people in the world, and probably half of those always believed that UFOs, that we weren't alone in the universe.
Yeah.
And that people had been visiting. Particularly, I think some of the, like the Native American tribes and the Aboriginal tribes, visitors from stellar, what they call, stellar civilizations, are part of their culture. And they're part of their cultural creation stories and myths. So I don't think the idea of off this civilizations from off this planet visiting the planet is that foreign to most of the world.
No, but it's counter of what the major religions want you to think and
Correct.
believe. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
It goes against their narrative.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of, I think there's probably some new Christian churches and some sects of Judaism that believe that extraterrestrial beings are part of the history of our civilization and planet.
Yeah, they would have to be pretty new age though, because the whole stories of the Bible, they completely changed too. They replace, you replace aliens with angels in the Bible and then basically it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even Christ could have been a hybrid. If Christ did exist, Christ could have been an alien hybrid. Mary could have been abducted.
Yeah, one of the things in this the Cosmic Secret movie, they talk about that they created, that the beings existed in multi dimensions, so they weren't just third dimension beings; that they had control of their consciousness across multiple dimensions.
Yeah,
and that
that's what Bashar says.
Okay, and that they manipulated the DNA of the hominids on Earth so that the new physical bodies would be conducive to them incarnating in one of the new genetically modified bodies from from their dimensional beings into someone who lived in in the third dimension here on this planet. And that, people that were prophets, wise men and people that, did miracles and things, could have been these higher dimensional beings incarnating in human form once the genetic modifications made that possible.
Yeah.
So that's also a possibility.
Yeah.
At some point, it's just the vocabulary you use to describe. I mean, a higher dimensional consciousness is what we call a soul. So in theory, we're alien beings too. And when we pass out of this physical shell, we'll go somewhere and be with people that exist in that dimension. I say people, beings.
Yeah.
So the idea of there being gods and angels and that kind of thing, it's almost like somebody created a dumbed down language to help people that needed help to kind of relate through metaphor to what goes on in the universe.
And they took it word for word.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense too.
So now we need to figure out the technology that the ancient builder races used, because I think it has a lot more to do with manipulation of energy than fire.
Well, that's another thing that Greg, what's his last name? Braden was talking about. He's like, they're discovering internal technology, and that it's about tapping in mentally.
You're right.
Tuning our dials in our brains. And he also talked, that's where creativity comes from. One of the stories he was talking about is his friend had been working on this piece of music for like years and years, and he didn't think that it was ready. He didn't think it was ready. And then, and he didn't see him for a while. And then he picked him up at the airport, and they turned on the radio, and it was his song, like his melodies, his harmonies, but he never released it. And somebody else literally wrote and produced the exact same song.
Because he was putting those vibrations out into the universe through his concentration and thinking.
Well, no, he was tapping into those vibrations.
Oh.
It's the opposite.
Okay.
And someone else tapped in.
As well.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people, like, there are a lot of instances of equal technology being created or discovered on opposite sides of the world at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's because people are just tapping. It's about tapping into the endless knowledge field. That's what I think happens when I make music. That's what I tell you. It's like I'm not in control. I'm not in control at all. I just zone in, and then like an hour or a couple hours or days later, I zone out. And there's a song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this song is awesome. Where the fuck did it come from?
Okay.
It's about tapping in, tuning in.
Okay. Sometimes I think you may get in your own way, that you superimpose your beliefs about what you think is cool. So you may be in a zone, but you haven't fully escaped your preconceived notions.
Okay. Okay.
Because I think a lot of stuff that you end up creating is, to me at least, seems sometimes derivative. So that's, you'll say, oh, this sounds just like Kygo, or oh, this sounds just like, you know, what was the one the other day, Louis the Child or something.
Yeah.
So, having those preconceived notions about what something is sounds like, I think, maybe constraining you.
That's not something that I'm thinking in the moment, though.
But as you're going through thinking about samples, what you think may be divinely inspired could be just something that you subconsciously recognize because it sounds familiar to something that you've heard before. That's what I worry about.
Okay.
Anyway, in terms of the ancient builder race and some of these technologies, I wonder if there are, well, if you look at the Sumerian carvings, and they're holding these like pine cone shaped tools.
Yeah.
I just wonder if there's some kind of way of focusing, I guess you could call them spiritual energies. I mean, it's all going to be electromagnetic.
Well, have you ever had a Reiki massage?
Well, no, I don't think
Do
so.
you know what Reiki is?
No.
Oh, that's something you should look into. I've only had one once, and it was in college, and it felt really good, and I felt like energized for like 3 or 4 days afterwards.
What is it they do?
They don't touch you, but they give you a massage, and sometimes they just do it on your hand, where they focus their energy,
Interesting.
but hovering like probably 6 or 7 inches above you, and it's just like focusing their energy on you on certain spots of your body.
Huh.
And I've only had it happen to me once. The girl who did it, I had a crush on, so that could have also been informing me at the time. But it worked,
Interesting. Well, they've done. We talked before about that Bosnian pyramid. They took, or I mean, they can photograph people's auras now with certain electromagnetic cameras of some kind, and they did aura photographs of people pre and post going into these negative ion chambers underneath the Bosnian pyramid.
Yeah.
And you could really see the difference in the auras before and after they went in and out. So there's all kinds of, we are energy beings.
That's a thing I could pitch to Insomniac. Is if the technology of those cameras, if there's technology of that camera is not like super expensive,
Yeah.
if you could have a pre and post EDC aura picture,
Ooh, that's a good idea.
right?
Yeah.
Pre and post rave aura picture.
Yeah.
Like, cause there is something magical that I cannot explain. The energy that you receive being in a field of 100,000 people all singing and dancing, like I danced for like 9 hours straight, not with drugs, like just dancing 9 hours straight. And I wasn't tired the entire time. But like, if I tried to do that by myself, there's no way I could do that shit.
It collapsed.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's like an energy enters you. Or tapping, and it could be everybody else's. I do feel like I am somewhat of an energy vampire to begin with, so that's why I've always liked giant parties, and I feed off of the energy of others. So that also could have something to do with it. Like my batteries are charged at big raves and stuff.
Well, I mean, that's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it, it's not necessarily that you're sucking other people's energy, but that there's something about being in a community of people that are all having positive feelings
Yeah.
that creates energy greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I don't know that a vampire is the right metaphor.
That's just what they call. It's called. It's just what it's called. That's just energy vampires is just what it's been called for a long time, but that's probably not an accurate metaphor.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, you went to Audiotistic. Did
Yeah.
you feel different? I mean, you were dancing,
Yeah, it's fun.
but were you more energized?
I certainly was not paying any attention to fatigue or soreness or anything. I mean, there's so much going on that your attention is definitely not focused inwardly. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly a way to get out of your own head. So to the degree that your soul is actually free from your physical form in reality, that it's tied, obviously it's tied here to make use of ears and eyes and taste and touch, but it's not, you are not your body. You are a soul, and your
Yeah.
body is just where your soul is currently hanging out. So to the degree that you can get your focus and your conscious attention off your own body and on something else, be it, the visualizations from the DJ or the crowd, or, whether you're a visual or oral person, something definitely distracting so that you are not at all focused on your own body, then, that probably explains why you feel like you're, energetic, because you are being an energy being and you're not paying any attention to your own physical form.
Well, I think that if you're not paying your attention to your energy form and you are sending your energy or focusing your energy on the external or another factor, that could explain why, like, athletes can perform at certain levels in front of larger crowds.
Mm-hmm.
And not just athletes, but like all performers,
Preachers.
preachers too. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But even like pro wrestlers and stuff doing that crazy stuff that they do,
So if you had 1,000 people who all understood the true nature of reality, and they could focus all of their attention on, an individual, and that individual could then manipulate that energy that all those 1,000 observers or worshipers were focusing on him or her, maybe they could levitate a 30-ton block into position on a giant pyramid.
Yeah. Or make somebody walk who like couldn't walk before.
Yeah.
All that, like you said, the preachers when they're doing their
Faith healing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could be as much about the what is it called? The preachers people?
Worshipers. Yeah. Congregation.
Congregation. It could be more about the congregation than the actual preacher, because he could just be directing the energy.
Yeah. So these are the kinds of new technologies that we need to be exploring. We don't need a 7th generation intercontinental ballistic missile. We need to figure out how to use crystals and resonant frequencies and things to help people.
Yep.
Yeah. And those kinds of, that kind of research is, I think, done. I think we have, programs in our government through the CIA probably that are looking at things like remote viewing.
Well, I gave you that thing, didn't I? Those papers that I downloaded from the CIA like a month ago.
Yeah. I remember those. That was sort of a historical look at the stuff that they had been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's out in the public domain now. So through Freedom of Information Act requests, documents can be declassified, or you can search through the documents that have been declassified because they're past their 50 years classification window. You know, but that tells you what the CIA was doing in 1970.
Yeah.
So now,
So what do you think they're doing
50
now?
years later, right?
How far have they advanced? What can they do now?
Yeah, well, apparently, according to your last story, they have Martian bases on Mars with alien civilizations. That was another thing they talked about in this movie, is that the builders, the ancient builders, not the progenitors that came after them, but the original ancient builder race, created giant caverns on planets like the moon, and that there's apparently a cave that a recent Japanese probe discovered, a subterranean chamber that's big enough to hold all of metropolitan Philadelphia on the moon.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So
Maybe that, I mean, you said that's how they got here, was on the moon.
yeah.
Has it been in the cave? Or did it just see the cave? Like, did it just scan the moon and see the cave?
Well, I think yeah. I didn't see that they had released any information about the cavern itself, other than that they had found it. I mean, if it had been in the cave and there was buildings and
Yeah.
equipment and stuff, I don't know that they necessarily would have released that information.
Probably wouldn't have.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. They're not telling us.
A lot of stuff. All the stuff. Not all the stuff. A small fraction of the stuff, but because they don't know all the stuff. Even the people who know a bunch of stuff don't know all the stuff. Like,
So what does Bashar say?
Bashar he says that so do you know the story about him at all? Where he witnessed, when he was like in his early 30s or late 20s, he witnessed 3 UFOs. And then he went to a channeling workshop, and the teacher of the channeling workshop was like, there's an entity coming in and it's not coming from me. And it came to him. And he said that the being that enters him is a transdimensional being from the future and a future iteration of himself. But it's also an alien, but in another dimension. It's an alien in another dimension that's also him.
Okay.
From the future.
Okay.
So his soul, his personal soul from the future, is channeling back to himself. But it's an alien.
Okay.
In another dimension.
It's a little complicated, but okay.
Yeah. But all this stuff that I've been saying for years is stuff that I've heard from him. That we shape our reality, and that we can enter other dimensions, and we are that we are constantly shifting, and we create our universe, and it all has to do with our internal world and what we constantly tell ourselves.
Okay.
And that anything and everything is possible.
Yeah. That's probably what the powers that be don't want people to think.
Yeah. But also, currently, we are in a dimension where we think that the powers that be don't want us to have that information, which is why the powers that be in this dimension don't want us to have that information. We could enter a dimension in which we know that the powers that be are going to release everything if we focus hard enough.
Okay, well, Since stuff is starting to come out, then we
That's
must
what
be
I've been
moving into
saying.
that dimension.
What I've been saying. I've been telling you guys this. You got to come with me to the better dimension because a version of you is coming. So if you want to come, if your individual version wants to come, you better strap in because we're going to a better world.
Okay.
Because that's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense. If you shape your world and if everyone is constantly shaping their own world, then in their own world, there's a version of you that's not you. It's the version of you that they need to be in that world. Does that make sense?
Sort of. But yeah, I think that may be a convenience. I think that may be a mental out.
But it can't be anything other than that.
Yeah, it can.
How?
That what they feel about you constrains you in some way.
But then that's removing your own power. That's saying that someone else.
You don't have absolute power.
No.
But yeah, I mean, if you feel, let's say, okay, your belief about yourself and the world that you want to go into is path A, and somebody else, all the people that have been around you your whole life and the souls that are traveling with you or whatever, and they think that you're on path B, that you have to convince not only yourself that path A is where you're going or want to go, you have to convince everybody else who sees you on path B as well that no, path A is where you need to be. And if everybody else wasn't constraining you, that the instant you thought you wanted to be on path A, you would be on path A. So the restriction, the reason that you have to constantly reiterate and what they say, put it out there in the universe, is so that you get agreement from the other souls that path A.
Okay.
Anybody that has if nobody had a perception of you, if nobody knew who you were or thought about you, but you can't, if you think you travel in soul groups lifetime after lifetime, there's no true isolation.
Yeah, we're always connected to one another.
Right. So that may explain why, like you said a couple of weeks ago, you can't just think it and it instantly manifests.
Yeah. That's why but I'll explain it to it in another way. There's two people on opposite sides of the country, okay? Right? Mm-hmm. One in New York, one in LA, whatever. And they both think and know and create that they're going to win the lottery and they're going to be the only person to win the lottery. They can both win the lottery. But one is going to win the lottery in one dimension and the other is going to win the lottery in another dimension.
I know that's how you perceive that it works.
That's the only explanation for it working. There's no other way it could work in another way. Because then both of those people would not win the same lottery.
Right. One would win one week and the other would win another week.
Not if they wanted to win the same, like the person who just won like almost $1 billion.
The one person
in
Michigan
who truly believed that they were going to. There's probably millions of people that won that same lottery and it was just one person. But just in their own world that we aren't in.
Okay. Well, that's perfectly fine for you to believe it.
But
that.
I'm saying you can't say that you are hindering yourself by placing a limit on it. You're placing a limit. And I keep telling you, the limit does not exist. There's an infinite upon infinite number of universes and dimensions. Everything that can happen, will happen, has happened, will continue to happen.
Okay.
It's the only way in my brain that it makes sense. It doesn't make sense any other way to me. It doesn't make sense that there would be a limit. Because if there was a limit, then none of this would exist in the first place. Nothing would get done. Nothing would get created.
I don't think there's an infinite number of you.
Why not?
Because then your
I'm still
soul,
me.
not if there's an infinite number of you.
Yes. Yes. Why not?
Because the characteristics of you are associated with where you go and what you do.
Yes. Exactly.
So if there was an infinite number of you, then you would be going infinite numbers of places and doing infinite numbers of things, and there would be no characteristics that constituted you because it was infinite.
I would be there is an infinite number of me, and they are all there are infinite numbers of me that are very similar, and there are infinite numbers of me that are very different.
Okay, and what I'm saying is for your soul to be a thing, a differentiable thing from all the other souls, then that can't be the case. Because if your
You're putting a
soul,
limit on souls now.
I am differentiating souls. Yes, I'm saying your soul to be to be something that's not just everything else has to have, whatever characteristics are unique to your soul. And as soon as you have unique characteristics to your soul, then you're not doing infinite things in infinite places.
Why?
Because then you would be infinite.
I am infinite. So are you. We all are.
In a sense, but only in the sense that we're not differentiated.
What?
The only way that we're infinite is in the sense that we're not differentiated. The part of us that's infinite is the part of us that's all everybody else.
Yes.
Non-differentiated.
And we're that too.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. The part of you that is differentiated from the everything, the part of you that is your own individual soul, if there is such a thing, is not doing infinite things as that manifestation of the soul.
No. Yeah. Okay. So you believe that there's a part of your soul that is infinite.
Connected to the infinite, yeah.
Okay. But that's not you.
It's not the me that would be identifiable as something other than everything.
But you do have a part of you that is a part of everything.
Yeah.
So then why couldn't that part of everything include another version of yourself in another dimension?
Well, it wouldn't be me.
Yeah, but it would be you because you are a part of everything.
It would be another like
Version of you.
Like we talked. Yeah, but that's the thing. Remember we talked about the metaphor of a giant blob covered with a bunch of little finger-like things. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, okay.
To the degree that there's another little finger-like thing sticking off of the blob, and I'm part of the blob, that's fine. But if I'm identifying my soul in this particular manifestation as one of those little finger-like things sticking off the blob, then the other finger-like thing sticking off the blob is some other manifestation. I mean, it
is some other manifestation. It's a you that chose different things.
Okay.
It's still you. You're still connected to the infinite.
Yeah, to the degree that I'm part of the infinite.
You keep trying to put it into physical form.
Not necessarily physical form, just to the degree that something is identifiable and differentiable to be interesting, then there's certain characteristics. And I think those characteristics that in this particular metaphor make something a little finger sticking off of the main body of soul energy, though that whatever that is that defines that little finger that's doing what it's doing makes it unique from the other little fingers that are doing whatever they're doing.
Yes. And that still fits in.
Fine. So your infinite number of universes or infinite number of people is, you're talking about me. When you say I could be doing something in any infinite number of ways, you're now talking about me doing what I'm doing, and your mom doing what she's doing, and people you've never met doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I'm saying is it's not you and the way that you think about yourself. It's just you as part of the general overall soul energy in the universe.
But I think included in that general overall soul thing, universal, whatever, that there are constantly new fingers being
Popped up.
popped up.
Sure.
Every millisecond
Sure.
is another version of me. But it's me. I'm saying
it's not you.
I'm saying it is me.
And what I'm saying
There's
is
another me that did not record this podcast today that we recorded yesterday instead of today.
yeah. And what I'm saying is that is a convenient way to think about it, but it doesn't make sense.
It's the only way, and it's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only way that makes sense. You keep trying to put limits on things.
No, I'm trying to say that a consciousness that is here to trying to learn about itself and experience itself, which is the reason for our coming into existence,
Yeah.
has certain characteristics that are unique to it that determine, and because of those unique characteristics are correlated with the experiences that you have and the situations you find yourself
Yes.
in.
Correct.
And if you're doing a completely different set of experiences and locations, then the characteristics that led you there and had you do that are not you. They're
No,
different.
it's a different version of me.
Okay.
But I'm not just saying it's not only like a different, like I would never run into myself
Correct.
because I'm not on the same, because there's no two me that exists in the exact same dimension. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that every micro millisecond, there's a new dimension and universe being spun off.
Okay. If that helps you.
There's a lot of people that believe that. It's not just me, man. There's a lot of people. It's a higher thing that you got to tap into.
What I'm saying is there's, as they study the way the universe is put together and they learn about atoms being just probabilistic instead of, real, if you will, the Schrodinger cat issue.
Yeah.
That the cat, is there really a cat in the box until you look to see if it's there?
It's if the cat's alive or dead.
Or even in the box.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
Like if the observer can, if what the observer expects to find creates the findings.
Okay. So I'll mind wrap this for you.
Uh-huh.
I expect and know that there are infinite versions of Chancellor Adam MacArthur Moore. So because I expect and know that, then it exists.
Okay. Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? The limit does not exist. You can do anything. You can be anyone as long as you focus.
Okay. So
Tune in to the right frequencies constantly.
Okay. And how do you discover the right frequencies?
I have no idea. That's why I'm not a millionaire right this second. But I'm on the path.
Is it like that? Having $1 million, that's your measure of whether or not you successfully tuned in?
No. Having millions and millions of people around the world listening to my music and liking my music. That's when I'll know that I've properly tuned in. And it's already starting to happen. Like in the last 24 hours, I was checking my Spotify for artists, and one of my songs had 800 plays, another had like 500 plays, another had 300. And literally every single one of my songs was played at least once on my Spotify by someone around the world. And that's never happened. That just happened like in the last 24 hours.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
I'm on the pathway.
You're on the path. Well, hopefully the song we're going to play this week won't disrupt the path. What song do you want to cue up for this episode?
We're going to do Chilled Behavior.
Okay.
Which I made a couple weeks ago, and I put it on Label Radar, and a small label wanted it, but they're a very small label, and so I'm just going to hold on to it. But I'll probably release it. I will release it.
But this is a song that is debuting on the podcast.
Yep. There's another
podcast debut.
Yep.
It's exciting.
So here is Chilled Behavior.
See you next week.
Adios.
2 1 2. Hey. Come on, let me close. Come on, come on, let me 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 come on, come on, come on, let me come on, come on, let me come on, come on, let me.
What we gon' call it? Don't stall it. What we gon' call it? Don't stall it.
Feel it in your bones, feel it in your soul, feel it in your guts. Let's get it, let's run it up, run it up, run it up. Can't stop, can't soak it up, roll it up, can't the fat, join it up. What we gon' call it? Don't stall it.
What we gon' call it? Don't stall it. What we gon' call it? Don't stall it. Don't stall it.
Can't stop, can't soak it up, roll it up, can't the fat, join it up.
What we gon' call it? Don't stall it.
Roll out a hit with $1 per hop. I'm guaranteed to blow up, but we never go pop.
Come on, let me come on, come on, let me come on, come on, let me come on, come on, come on, let me come on, come on, let me come on, come on, let me
Came to sing a song in hopes of moving life along. Beats banging like a gong and smashing like a cymbal. You be quick, jack out the box, and I'll be nimble. Might is touching on your ears like you're hitting loud. Not stopping with the knowledge to your temple, staccato. This hip hop stampedes and in the seeds, evil beats. When most rap these days stagnate, we proceed to rock a mic, rock a party, rock a cradle, rock a boat, hell, or even rock a tongue, J. Smooth like mountain butter on my morning toast. Not from New York, so I just say East Coast. Got a whole lot of hip with $1 per hop. I'm guaranteed to blow up, but we'll never go pop. Unless we pop locking or locking it down like a New York bagel. We're the best around. Got a whole lot of hip with $1 per hop. I'm guaranteed to blow up, but we'll never go pop.
feel it in your guts. Let's get it, let's run it up, run it up, run it up. Feel it in your guts, let's get it, let's run it up, run it up, run it up.